All right, let's get slowly started. So, welcome everyone to this CIMAC Tech-Talk. My name is Eero Lehtovaara. I'm heading the CIMAC Industry Strategy Group for Digitalization. My main work is at ABB Marine and Ports. And today we will try to a little bit demystify maybe what is digitalization, look at how it's connected to the business. So what is the value creation and how do we get the most out of it? And maybe one of the key questions, are we getting the most out of it? Shortly about CIMAC. CIMAC is one of the, I would say, the leading industry associations. Originally very much about internal combustion engines. Obviously, with the times going forward, we're starting to look a little bit broader onto what is important for the maritime industry going forward. We have members from almost 30 countries around the world. We have 11 working groups and 2 strategy groups. And as I said, I'm chairing the strategy group for industry for the digitalization part. We will be trying to talk around 1 hour, and this is a series where we will continue throughout the year, trying to open up with various panels on what is it that we're really talking about. But before we go forward, I would like to the panelists to introduce themselves. After that, we'll shortly kick off with a kind of a keynote speech or as I said earlier, kind of lighting the fire under the discussion. But please, guys, introduce yourselves. If you start, Morten.
Yeah, thanks for that, Eero. I'm Morten Vejlgaard Laursen. I'm from Maersk, where I'm located in a department called Fleet Management Technology as Senior Manager. We work with vessel development, operation, and as part of that also innovation and digitalization, where we support the fleet and connect that to the broader Maersk organization. Happy to be here and really look forward to engaging afternoon.
Thank you, Morten. Matthias, please.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Matthias Wiese. I'm head of technology for Siemens Energy Marine, and we are a supplier for electrical drive systems on board all kinds of vessels. And we're all under my responsibility also find digital solutions and services that we have in our offerings. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Really great session to have everybody at the desk, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Matthias. Tim, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Kent. I work for Lloyd's Register. I'm the technical director, so I'm responsible for our rules, technical procedures that are used in the classification and certification of ships and their systems. And with the increased use of digital systems on board ships, it's presenting a new thread of activity for organisations like ourselves. I'm very pleased to be part of this discussion with ship owners and OEMs and other classification societies.
Thank you, Tim. And last but not least, Rolf, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. I'm Rolf Stiefel. I'm with the Bureau Veritas in charge of the Central Europe region here, and actually I'm very happy that Tim is also here, because actually I'm not so long time in this classification business, but it is a very important business, especially when we look into topics like making results for digitalization. Before that, I was in charge, I was within the OEM engine builders, heavily implied also into developing of digital solutions. So from that point of view, I'm really interested in that topic and linked to CIMAC since quite many years. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Rolf. So then I would like to give the word to Morten to start kind of setting the scene. Morten, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for allowing me to set the scene here and sharing the views from the ship owner and the ship operator's perspective to kind of navigate where we're at and how we see the world. First of all, digitalization is not something new, even though it's something you can see the talk of the town everywhere right now. Then we have been working with digitalization for decades on the automations and navigational systems, and you can see for me this is an continuous evolution of the capabilities that we'll have on board the vessels. And as such, the digitalization, I think it's important to identify that digitalization in itself is not a separate topic. I think digitalization is a support for all the business processes we have, whether that's to operate the vessels, whether it's where to drive the vessels, and how to engage with those seafarers, etc., etc. Of course, it's a strong driver, it's a strong tool in the toolbox, but it is a tool that we're using to enable all the other business processes that we have. I think that's really the key here, that digitalization is a tool that has opportunities to be applied everywhere. First and foremost, the efficiency of how we operate our vessels, route planning, port optimization, but also the machinery on board the vessel can still have step changes in the way we operate that can be leveraged by the digital solution. On board the vessels, then repair and maintenance is another area that has been explored for some years, but you can say with the reducing cost of digital solutions will also, and more mature digital solutions, we'll be able to reap more benefits from that. Crew welfare is an often overlooked aspect of digitalization. The fact that we can improve the lives of our seafarers and also set them up for success on board the vessels, reduce the risks for them, is one of the key aspects for digitalization for us. Speaking of safety, then the safety of not only the crew, even though that's definitely number one, but also the assets and the cargo that we are carrying for our customers is an area where digitalization will remain to be a key contributor, whether that's predictions of adverse conditions or being better of control and giving better situational awareness of what we're actually operating right now. That also links into our customer promise, the reliability, you can see how we treat the cargo is something that we still need to improve on, and digital solutions also fit in there. And then there's the last area of the vessels themselves. I'm a strong believer that if we were able to design or to simulate and make better models of our vessels up front, we would be able to design even better energy plans on board the vessels. We would be able to step change you can see the designs of the vessels. And I think we have an unexplored territory if we compare to, for example, the car industry. And obviously the digitalization and the automation agenda, they go hand in hand. I see them as a starting point separate, but they will merge and they have an overlapping territory on board the vessels. So opportunities are there in plenty, and we look forward to reaping them. But the pain points are also in plenty. And to start with, one of the areas that are annoying us the most is system integrations and standards on how you interface items. We are currently in the process of or have made an overview of all our vessels on a digital platform, so we can see and have transparency to all our equipment and how vessels are operating. But having 55 different classes and with subdivers up to 70 different vessel types, that means that we have 74 unique integrations to the vessels. Had that been more standardized, then it would be super much more easy to create that transparency and to update and transform the vessels at a faster pace. Where right now we are looking into proprietary solutions for more or less all systems. That also links into the discussion on digital twins that I mentioned just before. That standard would allow us to also be better at predicting and designing our vessels in a digital manner and monitoring them digitally. Cybersecurity, needless to say, something that we are learning still in the maritime domain. We take that quite seriously here at Maersk, and that's also right now a prohibitor for accelerating. But I think the good thing is that everyone's taking that quite seriously now, and we are seeing that at center stage whenever we talk with vendors. And then one of the biggest disablers right now, the cost of these digital solutions and the benefit transparency. more often than not, digital solutions consist of a lot of different initiatives that where each of them contribute with a small additional benefits. But the cost of those often outweigh the benefit. And you can see, especially when there's no good transparency or good measurement of what's the benefit once you then implement it, that really is a stopping point for accelerating the digitalization. And I'll get back to in a minute how I propose that we solve that. Another really big area is the competences. On the shore side as well as on the vessel side, we really need competences that both are strong on the domain, but also strong on the technology capabilities, so we can merge the two worlds. Putting two teams together that know each their domain is not enough. We also need specialists that really can do both, and in turn overlap the two areas completely. Last but not least, the data accuracy is a serious pain point in whatever we do. We assume data to be accurate, to be the truth, but more often than not, the sensors are drifting, the timestamps are not reliable, and the data that's manual input lacks the necessary quality. So in order to build more mature and more advanced digital solutions, the data accuracy also needs to step up. So the problems are also there in plenty. But that leads me to the last the last point, the industry-wide solutions. Of course, at Maersk or at the individual companies, we'll address all of these items in in our individual way. But I do think that there are some overarching topics that we should address as an industry. One is the standards and the modularity, the architecture of what we do. We can really set ourselves up for success, both for upcoming initiatives, but also for life cycle management of the vessels, if we are better at having these standardized. The second point is what I call ecosystems of trust. The fact that if this industry comes together and we are sharing the insights, we would be able to accelerate the digital agenda much faster. We have to find a model for how everyone will then benefit from that and build that trust over time. But I do believe that the trust circle will accelerate what we can get out of it. And as mentioned before, we have a common interest and obligation to really build skills that are not in isolation, either domain specific or technology specific, but really build specialists that can merge the two domains. So that's my view of digitalization right now. It's an ongoing topic. It's continuous evolution, but it's definitely something that we need to invest as an industry to make it right now before we make too many different solutions. Let's make the effort to converge and really have a platform for the future in digitalization. Thanks so much for letting me have the opening words here, and I really look forward to taking your questions and comments or discussions on topics that was mentioned here. So back to you, Eero. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Morten. I already noted a long list of very important insights, and one of the things that maybe resonated best or strongest with me is that we have a lot of opportunities to integrate things and make things connected to each other, but still you as a ship owner, you are facing that everything is unique and individual and not really talking to the rest of its surroundings, and that cannot be the long way forward. I think that as always, the cost and the cost benefit will be one of the key topics. I think that it would be nice to talk about something else, but that is a fact that will always be there. And currently, if I understood you correctly, the sentiment is that most of the digital solutions that are brought forward today at this moment are more or less add-ons because it doesn't really take into account what's already there. And now Tim and Rolf are going to smile, but the data quality, I think that to have somebody else, a third party, to evaluate what is it that we're putting into the machine is going to be a really key component. So the third party evaluation of everything that we've been talking about is maybe also one of the topics that should be kind of worked on. Let's start with my competition with Matthias. Any insights or comments or feelings around this from your point of view as another OEM?
Yeah, thank you, Errol. I would like to dive in on two items more deep in. One is the cost and the benefit question. The other one is the compatibility with others. Maybe first of all, let me point out that out of our point of view, the digital solutions that we develop are not an additive value. They're a multiplicative value. So they do have an impact on existing solutions, and that makes it, on the other hand, very difficult to evaluate in what kind of a direction do we go. If we now look at our customer portfolio, it's really manifold. It's broad. There's different needs, even within same customers. There is different needs for similar vessels. So when I'm in my annual planning and I think, okay, what do we focus on? It's really difficult for us as a supplier to find well, most common issues. It's very various. That makes it difficult. Because we're an economical operating company as well, and we have a certain amount of money that we invest in our development. And our customers usually don't go in advance and give us some kind of a funding to do something. So it is our own risk. So we have to be very careful in what direction we go. And then we come into the second issue that I was mentioning. It's about the compatibility with other systems on board. That is also at least as difficult as our own issue. So we have a high number of combination possibilities, and to sort out the right way would have to be to increase communication, to open up a little bit towards each other, maybe even guidance from the classification societies. That's a brilliant way. We do this in a lot of other issues around our industries. We have standards that we follow. We have common language. By the way, what is the value of what is the unit of the digitalization? Is that really money, or is it a gain in having an advantage on certain developments? So I think we're missing to go ahead. We're missing some fundamentals that we together, everybody involved, have to set to make it easier and to make it possible for an economically operating company, also as a customer, to put their bets on a certain kind of direction to go. So my issue really is to look for some common definition and understanding, even same language. What are we talking about in terms of digitalization?
Thank you, Matthias. Tim, yes, that's a stupid question. Any thoughts? I was about to ask. Yes, you have thoughts about that. Would you like to comment?
you may or may not want to hear them. Just to follow on from a few things that have been said so far. Morten made the point very early on that digitalization is everywhere. It's an enabler or a different way of performing some of our existing business processes. Matthias, I think one of the points you were making was that there is a huge diversity in the implementation of digital solutions for different purposes, which makes it rather difficult to connect and integrate. You use the example of putting new equipment on board a ship with the existing systems. From a classification society point of view, where our core purpose is all about assurance of safety, this diversity and this potential incompatibility presents a bit of a challenge, because firstly, understanding what we mean by digitalization. So the digital system, it may be embedded components within within the ship system, providing digital control of operating functions, perhaps part of an autonomous system, part of a remote control system, perhaps replacing the human operator for some functions, and there will be a motivation behind doing that. Maybe it's to get a better precision of control of complex equipment. We might sort of link into some of the challenges of managing onboard fuel systems when we start using more exotic alternative fuels. Maybe it's aimed at keeping the operators out of harm's way in hazardous situations. Why put a person in harm's way when you can automate it and prevent them with a digital system? And in those cases, then there will be an expectation that some degree of assurance can be provided that those systems are dependable. And if every system's different, then actually providing that assurance is adding to that cost of implementation that we've heard mentioned before. And one sure way of managing down costs is through standardization. So standardization of systems following standard protocols, rules, regulations, whatever you want to call them, but taking a similar approach. So the whole design cycle isn't starting from a clean sheet every time. It's starting from accumulated experience. So that's that's one view. Completely different view of digitalization, although slightly linked, would be the streaming of data out of the ship for purposes. It may be for maintenance management purposes, maybe to get real-time insight onto the condition of the machine, maybe through some sort of algorithmic analysis to give a prognostic view. And actually maybe some of that output is an input to those digitized controlling functions I was mentioning earlier. So immediately, as I'm discussing, the whole digital network is getting more complicated. So standards are a really key thing here to demystify it and to help manage the cost. But we can't just write a standard on a clean sheet of paper either. That has to be based on experience. So there's a real need here, I feel, for the industry to collaborate, to share experience, to develop those standard architectures that can be encapsulated in rules and procedures that will help define the next iteration. So that implies a high degree of systems engineering, maybe the use of simulation techniques, because we may be considering multiple options. If you're not cutting a piece of steel on each occasion to demonstrate a prototype, you're cracking some code. Then simulating how that code works, a huge role for simulation techniques, and also in those simulations considering the impact of the heavily digitalized system on the operators, making systems that it's reasonable to expect an operator to be able to manage and deal with, even in abnormal conditions or reasonably foreseeable abnormal conditions. That can be included as part of the digital simulation. So there's threads that come together from all directions here. Classification societies may be working together as the members of IACS can help towards standardization. The provisions within the international regulations, such as SOLAS, would require a heavily risk assessment based analysis of a system that goes beyond prescriptive rules as a default. But as the rules develop, then the additional challenge of providing all of that additional engineering analysis on a case-by-case basis can be not put behind us, but we can learn from what we've done, and that can inform the next generation of projects, the next generation of standards, and the industry will continue to improve and evolve and exploit the opportunities presented by digital systems.
So basically, putting a little bit provocatively, it would be that having these unique and individual solutions, a little bit like Morten was saying, is to reflect on what that Matthias was saying, the opposite of creating value, not using the opportunity that we have really, and as you said, Tim, something that we should really get to work on, how to together make it work, so that we have real integration, we have real communication between components and so on. So that definitely needs to happen. Rolf, would you say that just kind of in my mind there, that is digitalization something? Is it a thing, or is it just the new industrial environment where we are at the moment?
Yeah, in a way, I think we can always think back how the whole story started. I mean, individually, the shipping industry, I would say, is rather late in the whole process. Why is it so? It is so because the connectivity of the individual asset was extremely poor. And every individual asset was given into the hands of the crew, into the captain and the chief engineer, to operate in the best way, and the ultimate reporting was the Noon report, the very famous year-old Noon report. And the digitalization started actually by digitalizing the Noon report, and getting actually data from that aspect. So from that point of view, I think there is a bit of a historical weakness in the approach of the shipping industry from that end. Further on, I think the other complexity, if we compare the shipbuilding industry now, looking at new assets or new ships, and compare that with other assets like, for instance, cars or airplanes, where you have actually very limited amount of suppliers or makers even, which are in full control of the whole process to set up the product. I mean, in the shipbuilding industry, there is a magnitude of companies providing services and providing information products to the industry. And it makes it so difficult to integrate the components and to integrate the individual interfaces. And I think there is a good reason why we are here now in this meeting with CIMAC. This is one of the industry groups where actually the OEMs are represented, together with ship owners, but also classification societies, which I fully agree with Tim, should play here a role, and Ajax is the right code word to say here, in order to get a bit of more guidance into this sphere or in this arena. Nevertheless, the focus needs to be on the results, and on the results which are helping at the end of the day the ship owners and the ship operators. I mean, it's not always everything needs to go and via digital means and connected to shore and big data centers, and to register the temperature of the cooling water of the main engine within every minute of the operation. Most likely that is not necessary to make the right decisions. These kind of things can stay on board, and which makes it more easy to also control safety aspects, closed loop control issues in the automation system. So I think we need to be very careful to distinguish between those items which need to be coordinated on a broader level, what needs to be used to create digital twins to understand better the operational behavior of the ship. What is digitalization helping in maintaining the asset? For instance, why is the main engine not ordering piston rings automatically for the next port of call? Such kind of things, and the more general issues which are then coming into how the ship is operated, routing, and so on and so on. So I think much more differentiation needs to be made, and clustering of digitalization and digital result oriented to get a step forward. And after that, the standardization is definitely the word to play, so that different systems can communicate to each other, so that you are achieving a standard and more easily than what you have on an airplane or in a car, where everything is connected to each other.
Thank you, Rolf. One thing that I was wondering is that we kind of seem to be quite a lot, very much on the same page, and not really of different opinions. And so wondering, why is it so difficult? I mean, where is the showstopper, so to say? Morten, you mentioned trust earlier in your opening. What's missing? I mean, I think that we all see that we are missing on opportunities when it comes to digitalization. How should we go on? What is the solution to bring this discussion to the next level?
Well, if I could find the solution for that one in one sentence, then I would probably progress quite further in my career fast. I think the trust part is obviously something that has to be built over time, and I think we're trying with some companies to get that, but the good old what's in it for me kind of thinking needs to step a little bit in the background and see what's in it for us. One of the hopes I have is that the decarbonization agenda, and you can say and other agendas that are of a larger magnitude, safety as well, can lift those interactions. Say, hey, this is not a playing field where we need to compete. We need to lift this as an industry, and then take that, broaden that discussion to also include the enabling elements like digitalization. But I'll see there's one other aspect that I want to reflect on, and that's the approach that digitalization has been working on so far. The last 5 years, or also before that, then you can see the approach that we've often been met with is just give us your data, and then we'll do magic with that data in whatever form and shape it is. And we've tried that enough times to say that won't work. So instead of, and I think that's where Rolf was spot on, that we need to start with the outcomes and the business processes and really say, hey, what's actually needed here? That previous only one tool in the toolbox, digitalization, give us your data and we'll do some broad analytics and data mining on it. That's not necessarily the solution for all aspects here. So really understand your business and understand how would digitalization impact that business is, you can see, is an enabling factor to really, and that's perhaps the key point, focus on the most valuable items and really get started on that. Right now, my feeling is that we are trying to digitalize everywhere at once, and that doesn't bring the consensus around. If you can see, if every company is focusing in their own directions, and hopefully CIMAC and class and other you can see more generic bodies will be able to support that focus and saying, okay, let's address this problem and get a right solution for that. So that was some reflections, at least on saying. Any comments from the rest of you?
I would like to maybe add something in general. We have a lot of systems running in the field since many years, since at least 12, 15 years, collecting a lot of data. And we know a lot what's happening. First of all, one thing you must know is that the connectivity on board a lot of vessels is not as good as we would assume here. You know, maybe Maersk has a good broadband connection on all of their ships, but that's not the usual case. Most of them are like really insufficient equipped, and the noon report via radio that's the standard. This is maybe one thing you should keep in mind. So we spend a lot in the technology just to making it sure that this works at all times. But on the vessels that we do have equipped and they are running, we see there's very little use of the data today that we collect. So if we drill down deep, what are you doing with this kind of a data? You can look up every door switch on board like a cruise vessel. It's hardly used. So there's a lot of potential there. Yeah, maybe this as a first statement from just to keep in mind in our discussion here.
Yes.
I think one of the challenges that we face in the maritime industry is a kind of timescale thing. The pace of change of what's actually possible in terms of digital technology is moving very quickly, the specification, design, and delivery and lifetime of a ship is actually quite drawn out. So I feel we need to find a way to perhaps somehow accelerate our internal industry processes to be able to embrace change as it happens. But even then, different companies are going to be able to afford to embrace new possibilities at different rates to others. So I think that's one of the challenges. Another one of the challenges, I think, and you may have heard me say this before, the relative cost of a ship compared to other asset types that may be heavily digitalized puts us in a difficult position. We've heard aeroplanes and cars mentioned. So a car that is heavily digitalized in terms of its systems may only sell for $20,000 or $30,000, but it's produced in the hundreds of thousands. So that design is able to accommodate a significant engineering cost. Even an aircraft that may cost order of magnitude similar to a ship is produced single model in the hundreds, whereas a ship is designed in a very short series by a far more diverse group of shipbuilders, and I think that leads to the challenge that Morten was alluding to earlier, where you have 70 odd different designs of ships within a single owner's fleet. And I think, from my perspective, part of the solution to that is more standardization of systems, that modularization of systems, maybe that fit into maybe that diverse range of ships, such that we're able to be more gain more economies of scale in our design of digital systems as we insert them into ships. And something that was more formally modularized would perhaps even help with Matthias's problem about inserting new technology into old ships. If we were working with more standard modules, then we would have an easier job of integrating those standard modules together.
How do we get into those standard modules? I mean, is it via regulation or the safety aspect? I mean, perhaps the ship owners seem to be willing to take the cost of every ship being its individual unit instead of building series. I don't know where that's. By the way, before I let you, Matthias, speak, for the possible audience and the attendees, there is a chat function, and we are going to have a look at any questions from the audience to the panel in a little bit. So if you wanted to put forward any question related to the discussion, please go to the chat and then put questions forward. Sorry, Matthias, now go ahead.
Oh, sure. That's like to hear questions from the audience, indeed. Well, there's an economical barrier. That also has to be said very clearly. So at this point we might get a little bit controversial, but this is like a deep behavior that's inside all of us. Because like when you buy a car, for example, and then you would expect that it brings you from A to B and it works perfectly, and that there's a software inside that's perfectly fine for you. Now just imagine that the car dealer tells you, well, if you put on extra money, you get a even better software inside your car. And then he will answer, I'm buying a car, not the software, so why are you giving me a cheap software? So you end up then we are again at the what the session is called. It's the value of digitalization. It's difficult to grasp, yeah. So and especially in software, because it's bits and bytes. From the outside, it all looks the same. So there is an economical barrier, because customers and our customers and probably all of your customers, they're of course a little reluctant to pay more for something that maybe they don't see. What we are doing, especially here, is looking for different cooperation models. That sometimes that is a way to work, like, well, to look at things together and to see what's in for everybody. But it is a question also of maybe customers willing to operate a lot of individual ships, and that might have additional costs, but not willing to invest in a smart software to reduce fleet consumption or something like that, because they would expect it to be there anyway. If I sell a drive, they would expect it's the best they can get.
Good points. Basically, what we are all saying that without us talking to each other more and getting a little bit deeper into what we are actually doing, I mean, without additional, let's use the word trust, we keep on having completely individual solutions, and that will not give us the value that we are expecting to get out of the modern technology or the development of technologies. Is that a fair assessment on it? Yeah, Morten.
I think it is a fair assessment. I just want to share, you can see an area where we're actually succeeding a little bit as a container industry, and that's the so-called Digital Container Shipping Association, DCSA, where all the major shipping lines has entered into you can see an organization exactly to establish how we handle the container as a digital entity. From end to end. So there, and you can see on that note, it was more of a company-wide need that we actually see exactly so that since our containers are transported on others' vessels as well as our own, then we need that, if we need to deliver the customer promise, we need to collaborate on it, and that common realization actually made the you can see the industry come together and solve this problem. So I think, as an example, if you can identify the need and you actually have the will in the companies, then it is possible to set up those collaborations to create the standards. But you need to focus and exactly know what is the value that will come out of it. And in this case, it is clear.
So that's a good challenge, Morten, that if we're not getting into there, then you say that there's not a will to do that. Sorry, Rolf, go on.
No, I think Morten is perfectly right. I personally believe that there needs to be a drive actually from the user's point of view. So in this respect, the ship owners and the ship operators to put more pressure in the industry, because I mean, my former life was OEM, and you are always in competition, and that is normal. I mean, even on that screen, we have a guy from Siemens and a guy from ABB. So in a way, they are also competitors fighting for the same clients and to get the same deal. So from that point of view, moving forward, we would need this pressure from the ship owner side in relation. And I think, Tim, there we can only play a kind of orchestrating role here and an organizing role to get those standards more specifically formulated, so that at the end of the day, the individual suppliers, and there are so many small suppliers supplying whatever kind of equipment which go on board of ships, and that industry we are not able to change, to know how they need to structure maybe their interfaces of their system so that it can be connected to a bigger thing. Yeah, sure, there will be only limited amount of companies being able to integrate the whole, but standardizing or offering such kind of rules where others can connect to would definitely help, I think, to create such kind of a drive towards it.
Morten.
Yes, just a fast comment on that. One example where I think we've been greatly helped by class doing that is on cybersecurity, where you have to remember that when we buy a vessel, then it's a shipyard that builds a vessel. We are specifying it, we are asking for it, but we have to be able to, in a simple manner and in an industry understandable manner, to say, hey, this is the requirement that we have to the equipment we put on board the vessel. And for the cybersecurity, the IX guidelines is a great help. And had you the same on, hey, this equipment needs to fulfill these standards for integrating, for being enabled. That would at least be a way of communicating about it as a starting point. So I definitely second your thoughts here.
How do you see, will we, I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about from time to time is that when we increase the complexity of the solutions on board, and at the same time, when we do not have the regulations really to control that, everything else, as was mentioned earlier, is already the quality of the data that is put into. Is there a risk that we are not having safe ships anymore when we continue this way? and what should we do with that? That's Tim. You and I, we have had a lot of discussions in this. Sorry for throwing you under the bus, but what's your take on that question?
Well, I think if we are all diligent in doing our job as an OEM, as a independent assurance organization, maybe even as a flag administration who we present our work to, if we're presenting an alternative design and arrangement case, then I don't think we're compromising safety, but we're not being efficient in achieving safety. We are not learning from previous experience because we're working outside of standards. And some of the comments previously around the way in which different components integrate together. Sometimes they integrate together through the invisible component of software, creates a kind of digital thread through the asset. And I think if we can be clear about what that digital thread looks like, how it connects the different components in a properly integrated manner, then we're onto a value from digitalization. And I think you could extend the digital thread model a bit further, actually, because that thread could run through the different businesses in terms of the way in which they interact, in terms of the way in which they integrate their designs, they integrate their procurement, supply chain, the way in which they integrate their assurance documentation going back up the supply chain. If we were able to join things up, thread things together, if you like, to use the same analogy, then we would be able to achieve that level of safety far more efficiently, but we'd also be able to run our businesses far more efficiently as well.
That's a good point, and I think that I have the feeling that we are not reaching the level of efficiencies. We're not able to find all the opportunities because we do things isolated in silos, and I think that's what Morten is a little bit angry with us about, that we should talk more to each other. Did you want to say something, Rolf?
No. I fully agree, actually, with what you have been saying. So from that point of view, I can only underline that that is important. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat, and I'm conscious about the time. It's 10:02. So when the benefits of the digitalization across all value chain are evident, so how and what should we do in shipping to speed up penetration of digital solutions? I think that's almost, it's not Morten who has made a question, but it's almost like he would have asked that. So any comments on that question? Who wants to start?
Well, I think we've had the thread. There's that word again. We've had this come through the discussions up until this point. We need to step up the way in which the different sectors within the industry collaborate together. Actually, the industry itself is a complex system, and we need to get our own systems engineering of our industry sorted out, so that we can effectively engineer efficient systems for the things that we're producing. So we need to find time to talk more, but then get beyond the talk into actual specific action around developing some of these standards, not just technical standards, but standards in the way in which we work together, accepted practices, so that we're able to draw the benefit. Because at the moment, I feel that the digitalization is offering benefits with the one hand, and because of the way in which we tend to implement, it's taking them away with the other.
That's a good way of saying it. What's your take, Rolf, on the same?
Yeah, I mean, I can only underline what Tim is saying. I believe that definitely the drive needs to come from the ship owner's perspective. I think that's what I mentioned already before. And I mean, class societies can definitely play a role here. I see that, but also not as an individual entity, but through a collaboration, because the least what we need is different rules and different regulations how systems should communicate to each other. It needs to be as standardized as possible. One problem I see is again going back to the structure of our industry, is that we always have the dilemma of the shipbuilders, which are in between. I mean, between the OEM suppliers on one hand side, the ship owners on the other hand side, and maybe us as a supporting entities like classification societies. And the shipbuilders are in one hand or another sitting there also from a contractual legal point of view in a very decisive position. And as those players, the shipbuilders are in many cases rather weak in terms of aspects we are discussing right here, also because they have limited interest on it. Yeah, and this is maybe one of the weaknesses we need to address, and where that's why others need to step up, and CIMAC would be one of a good audience maybe to initiate certain aspects here around, at least when we talk about machinery part of the ship. I mean, there's other parts like the communication parts or the routing and so on, and maybe we are not so competent on that area. But on the machinery part, I think that is one area where the CIMAC as a group can play a more decisive role collaboratively.
Thank you, Rolf. Matthias, I get the feeling that the others here, they are not happy with us OEMs, not really talking to each other good enough. And CIMAC obviously is a good platform, and it's clear that ABB and Siemens being harsh competitors on so many different levels, but there's clearly a request for more openness, especially on the pre-competition level for standards and similar. What's your take on that? I know you don't want to talk to me, but in general, so how can we go further?
Well, I think I'm first of all, I'm the new generation, so I'm seeking contact to you as well, Errol. Yeah. Having the proof that I'm here. No, what I think is important, and this is coming back to fundamentals, is to first of all find the common language and to find common items. And then you don't have to reveal any IP on that at that stage. That maybe comes at a later point of time where you can have to define, okay, is this now are we going into competition? But if we talk about standards and we talk about then we need to find like the same language. And then I think we can also set up a proper communication towards the shipyard has to be involved. This is an issue in our business every day. This is it does not only apply for digitalization. We find ways to handle this and to bridge, but I would like to really push towards common language, vocabulary, and kind of things that we talk about. That would be a first step for me, in fact. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthias. I think that's really, I mean, how can I sell something to Morten if we are using a language so that we don't understand each other? That's becoming very complicated. I think that from the discussion so far, if I'm trying to kind of make some kind of a summary, is that maybe there is no big mystery with digitalization. This is just something that's all around us anyway, and we are growing into that, and maybe it's also for us to also acknowledge that my youngest daughter is a diginative, and I'm a dinosaur when it comes to digitalization, but it's still there, and there is a value opportunity with digitalization, which we are not really reaching because of a number of reasons, and some of them are really about standards, common language, the whole taxonomy thing, cooperation. So we need to talk to each other much more than we do, and that I think that both requires a certain level of trust, but that it also creates trust when we talk to each other and talk about these things. Do you think that I mean, any comments to the summary? And I'm also seeing one question in the chat. So that is really digitalization currently changing something fundamentally in our activities in our companies, or is it something that's kind of slowly creeping onto us and we need to adapt? I mean, what would be your feeling on that? Tim was already trying to say something.
You misread me licking my lips to wanting to say something, but actually I think you were right. But right back to the start of Morten's presentation, actually, when he said that digitalization is an enabler for existing business processes. It's an enabler that helps us do things slightly differently, maybe more efficiently, maybe safer. Maybe quicker, but enables us to do things differently. So if we think in those terms and summarize all those difference to better, digitalization is a way of enabling us to do things better. Then there is no mystery. It's just a part of the evolution of life.
Rolf?
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty clear. The ships are continuing to transport cargo from A to B, and the question is just through digitalization, it can be done in a more efficient way, and the management of the assets and whatever is involved can be done in a more efficient way, saving time, make it more safe as well, more reliable. So yes, it is in a way, this observation, it's creeping up to us, is maybe a little bit true, because the industry is traditionally not really just the fastest, but there is a great opportunity here. So yes, we have to adapt, and these kind of discussions and these kind of forums are maybe the beginning to make it possible on a broader aspect than just individual company, supplier, OEM by OEM. Yeah, and that I think is the aim of this activity we are having here today, and the venture we are in here.
I have some further questions. Can classification societies support the understanding of the value behind the data? Which is, I think, something that Morten would be quite happy with.
I think that classification societies, well, if it comes to the specific value, at a certain point, then the unique value for us is something that is also our competitive advantage. We are not different from anyone else in that. But I think on the more generic understanding of how the data plays into various aspects and how there's potential value add, I think the class would be a brilliant place to kind of consolidate that understanding of what needs to be standardized in order to bring specific outcomes. Yeah. But I would say that for me, class represents one area where different competences meet, and also a decent level of business understanding. So on that note, they represent what I think is the biggest challenge, and that is that all the competence areas, from the operations, from the equipment, and from the digitalization side, all these three areas need to come together. Otherwise, something that is not useful for us will be developed, or something that will be too expensive is what we propose, or similar. We need to come together, all three competence areas, to address it. And class represents quite a lot of that competence in my mind.
So, Tim and Rolf, the role of classes going forward, how do you comment on these questions? Who wants to start? Tim.
Okay. Well, the role of class in some ways is unchanged, because it forms actually a key part of that ecosystem of trust that we heard about previously, and class societies for decades, if not centuries, have been trusted with confidential information about the condition of ships and their systems, and that information is provided in a different way through data, through digitized data, rather than maybe handwritten survey reports and comments. So that position of trust is essential for classification societies to be their job, do their job, and be the honest broker of data around ships and their systems. The class societies' roles are, in the traditional role at least, are limited to the safety and more recently the environmental performance of ships, and there is far more commercial data that is also available from the digitalized ships, and that honest broker of that sort of broader set of data, I think, is something that may evolve over time. But the insight that's extractable from that data is obviously of value to the originators of the data themselves. So I think they need to play a key role in deciding what they're prepared to share with others.
Yeah, so there's another question about energy optimization, which is more or less something that has to do also with the environment. That should be of central importance. Maybe it's not to the level where it is today. Collecting data is the basis of optimization. So can we do a good job without the ship being a system when treating that data? What's your take on that, Rolf?
I think definitely. I mean, there is a huge potential in this area of improving the environmental efficiency and the commercial and environmental efficiency. It goes hand in hand for the ships, and through this digitalization move, by monitoring more closely what is actually going on board. And yes, I mean, that can be done. But as Tim has very nicely explained, I mean, so far our role is more in verifying and basically confirming and delivering the trust that the data which are provided related to MRV or whatever IMO DCS are true, and considering what a chaos it is to get this data in an appropriate way in real life from all these ships out there, and how it is done. I see a huge potential for digitalization, especially in these aspects. So it's also in our vital interest as a class to work on that topic very fast together with ship owners. I mean, that's pretty clear. Yeah.
Thank you, Rolf.
But actually, mentioning MRV and DCS raises another point about sharing of data, so related to energy efficiency in this case. That data is now only shared or made available because of top-level regulation. Otherwise, many companies would be very unwilling to share that data. So go back to the point of the ecosystem of trust. That clearly doesn't exist to the extent it needs to if there is to be a more open sharing of data, even if it's shared confidentially with trusted brokers.
Yeah. Now, the topic of data and sharing data and using data is warrants its own hour or two with the next in the series, and then we'll definitely get back to that. I think that one of the I like the term the ecosystem of trust. I think that that's something that we need to get together so that we can get to, as one comment on the chat is that we are really far from plug and play, and before we can have that kind of level of solution that Siemens and an ABB systems can be used as a plug and play combination. I would like to say that we are there today, but that may be true when it comes to wall sockets in our homes, but otherwise not really. we're running out of time. We were already a little bit over time, and as always with you guys, we could easily go for 3 or 4 hours, but that we don't have the time, so we will have to continue with this. From my side, as always, been extremely interesting. Thank you, Morten, for the setting the scene, and Matthias and Rolf and Tim, thank you so much for the insight and the input. And we will most definitely continue the discussion either publicly as we do here now, and even more certain when we continue our meetings with the digital strategy group. So very much thank you from my side, and I hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.